Your skin isn't just itching, it's screaming. Deep inside, where no royal physician can reach, your feet have swollen into heavy, useless weights. Your genitals are turning black, beginning to rot while you are still using them. There is a smell in the room that the incense can't hide, the scent of a man dying while he's still awake. You are Herod, the king history calls the Great. You spent a lifetime building monuments that will outlast empires. But as you sit on this throne of gold, you realize your most horrific creation is the tomb your own body has become. You are still giving orders. You are still sentencing men to death. You are ruling a kingdom while worms crawl through your living flesh. Today, you are him. This is your life as the king who rotted alive. You were not supposed to be king. You were born an Idumean, not Jewish by blood, not Roman by citizenship, not trusted by anyone. You were an outsider with a stolen title. Rome called you king, but Jerusalem called you an enemy. To wear the crown, you had to take the city room by room, fighting through streets that hated you. And then, you tried to build your way into their hearts. You tried to buy their love with stone. You rebuilt the temple into a wonder of the world and carved a palace into the cliffs of Masada. These weren't monuments, they were fortifications against a world that never wanted you. But the stone was the only thing that ever stayed loyal. And years later, as you sit in a hippodrome in Jericho, you will try to build one last thing, a way to force the world to finally cry for you. But before the stone fails and the worms arrive, there is one person who could have saved you. One chance to be a hero instead of a monster. And in your madness, she is the first thing you will destroy. The paranoia starts with Mariam. She is your wife, and you love her more than you have loved anything. She is Hasmonean. She is the dynasty you replaced. Marrying her was political genius. Loving her was your undoing, which makes what comes next worse than anything that happens to your body. This is where history ends and a medical nightmare begins. If you're here for the gritty truth, hit like and subscribe. It's the only way to ensure these stories keep being told. The historian Josephus recorded your end in a detail that is almost too much to read. A fever that wouldn't break while you were draped in the finest silks, itching across every inch of your skin, a sensation physicians call Pruritus that no royal servant could scratch away. Your breathing slows, your feet heavy with fluid. And then the symptom no one in your court was allowed to discuss. The worms. You are sitting on a throne of gold while worms crawl through your body. You are alive. You are still giving audiences. And you are rotting. But the rot in your flesh is nothing compared to what you're about to do to your own blood. Today, a doctor would look at you and see a medical emergency, failing kidneys, and a rare, aggressive flesh-eating bacteria called Fournier's gangrene. In the 21st century, you'd be rushed into surgery within the hour just to stay alive. But in 4 BC, there were no antibiotics and no scalpels. You have warm water and you have prayer, and neither is stopping the rot. Josephus records a detail that makes the rot even more terrifying. You were not bedridden. You were not withdrawn. You were still ruling, still sentencing people to death, still receiving reports from your generals. You were processing the agony and conducting state business at the same time, because the alternative was admitting the body had already lost. But to understand why your flesh is failing, you have to see how you already destroyed your soul. You killed Mariam in 29 BC, not on the battlefield, in a trial you arranged. A rumor, probably planted by your sister Salome, who had wanted her gone for years, that Mariam had plotted against you. There was almost certainly no plot. You knew on some level there was no plot. You convicted her anyway, but you couldn't execute the memory. Court records describe you wandering the palace at night, calling her name, ordering servants to prepare her rooms, telling physicians she had simply gone away for a time. The most powerful man in the region, sleepwalking through his own palace, summoning a woman he had killed. That is not cruelty. That is a man who already knew what he had lost. You killed her mother, Alexandra, the year after, for looking at the palace walls like she was calculating what belonged to her. You killed 2 of your own sons, Alexander and Aristobulus, strangled at Sebasta in 7 BC, convinced by the same poisoned court that they were conspiring against you. They were young men, educated in Rome. They had done nothing except exist in a line of succession that made you nervous. The Emperor Augustus, who had backed you for 30 years, reportedly said, "It is better to be Herod's pig than his son," a statement so accurate it didn't need updating. Augustus had watched Herod for 30 years. He had seen the pattern. He had seen what happened to the people Herod loved most. And he had summarized an entire reign of terror in a single sentence. 5 days before your own death, you proved him right. You killed Antipater, your remaining heir, the last one, because a letter arrived suggesting he had bribed your jailer. Every person you loved, you eventually had killed. Every relationship you built, you destroyed. The court you ruled was empty of anyone who would mourn you. And you knew it because you were still sharp enough to know it. By the end, you are in Jericho. You have gone there for the warm baths, the last medically reasonable option left. A desperate attempt to relieve the itching and the slow disintegration of a body that has stopped obeying you. The baths don't work. Nothing works. At some point in your final weeks, you reach for a fruit knife. Your cousin Archibus grabs your wrist before you can finish the job. The official story is that you fainted. The court knows what actually happened. Here is the detail that tells you everything about who you were. You understand with complete clarity that when you die, there will be no weeping. Not from the court, not from the people, not from the Jewish leaders who watched you execute their scholars and rewrite their traditions. You, the man who rebuilt the temple, are going to die unmourned by the religion you allegedly served. And you cannot accept that. So you issue an order. Round up 70 of the most prominent men in Judea, the aristocrats, the elders, the respected ones. Lock them in the Hippodrome at Jericho. When I die, kill them. That way, every family in Judea will have someone to grieve. There will be weeping at my death, whether anyone means it or not. You were trying to manufacture grief through mass murder. Your sister Salome released them the moment you died. There was no weeping. Herod the Great was not undone by his enemies. Rome never turned on him. No rival king defeated him. No rebellion succeeded. Every external threat he ever faced, he handled. He was undone by the mathematics of trust. He wasn't fighting an army. He was fighting a ghost. The constant, screaming fear of being replaced. Every person he elevated, he eventually suspected. Every person he loved, he killed first, before they could do it to him, before the loyalty could curdle into betrayal. The logic was airtight. The outcome was that he died in a palace full of people and utterly alone, trying to force strangers to cry at his funeral. Masada wasn't a palace. It was a coffin with a view. You built for eternity, but you died with nothing. You built things that lasted 2,000 years, but you couldn't build a single relationship that outlasted your heartbeat. If you want another ruler who built something magnificent and destroyed everything around them to protect it, the next video is already waiting.